Hello everybody, Eternal Flame here, and today I'm here to talk about my theory about Yuji Itadori and his new domain expansion. Now, the main reason I'm here to talk about this today is because while Yuji has awakened a domain expansion, we don't actually know what that domain does yet. However, I do think there's been enough clues given throughout the previous chapters as well as Yuji's general narrative to figure out what that domain does. So basically, I'm here today to talk about my theories about the domain expansion as well as my thoughts about some of the fandom's general belief about what this domain expansion will actually end up doing. So up first, I'm going to go with what I believe is the most likely idea for what the sure hit is going to be, and then I'm going to go down the list of insanity. So what I believe is the most likely idea for what the sure hit is going to be the soul dismantles, and that the soul dismantles are going to be basically the sure hit to make them automatically hit Sukuna. The main reason is because this entire chapter centered around basically Sukuna being able to dodge Yuji's soul dismantles, because no matter how much of a threat they could be to Sukuna's body because of the binding value Yuji placed, it wouldn't matter because of the fact that Yuji could never hit him. So we need to make it a domain in order to make it a sure hit in order to hit Sukuna. So this is by far and away the most simplest solution and the most likely thing for what it's going to be. However, I do think that Yuji's domain is going to be more than simply just Malevolent Shrine, but specifically targeting the barrier in between the soul. I think there is going to be a lot more than just simply that, and the main reason why I think that it's going to be a lot more than just that is because of the position we see Yuji and Sukuna in this chapter. Where at the end of the chapter, we see Yuji extend his hand outwards to Sukuna in order for the two of them to go onto a train. And I don't think that's going to be very likely if it's just simply landing soul dismantles, purely because of the fact that if it was, why does Yuji need to extend his hand out? Can't just make it hit him immediately. So it's why I think there's actually going to be more involved than simply just soul dismantles. However, I do think that soul dismantles are going to be an important part of the domain. The way that I believe Cleave is going to be infused into the domain is in order to sever the connections one has to the living world. Effectively, what I believe the purpose of Yuji's domain expansion is going to be is to confront somebody with the actions that have happened their entire lives. For example, it's going to make Sukuna confront everything that he has done his entire life and have to relive it all, again and again until he moves on from his life and decides to move to the next realm, the realm of the dead, where these trains are going to be a guide for someone's entire lives, for them to relive their life over and over again until they choose that now is the time for them to pass on and die. And there are actually a couple of reasons why I do believe that this is the purpose of Yuji's domain expansion. Where the first reason is quite simple. It's because this is what Yuji's goal has been the literal entire series ever since the start. Where ever since Yuji's grandfather died, his goal was to be able to give people good deaths, to be able to make it so people didn't die alone and that they could die satisfied at the end of their lives. So what better way is there to show someone that someone has lived their lives to the fullest and show them that they are ready to move on? Other than showing them, of course, a complete recollection of their lives, to play it over and over again in order to see what links them to this world and allow them to finally move on from what links them to this world. Which is also what I believe the purpose of the soul dismantles are going to be as well, effectively severing those links and allowing people to move on, allowing the train to take them to their next life, to take them to the next station, rather than keeping them in the station they've been stuck at for so long. However, there is more to it than just simply Yuji's entire goal, his entire life has been this, as another reason why I believe this is actually the case is because of what has recently been uncovered about the domain hand sign that Yuji had done. Now, I should say this entire research is not my actual research, but it belongs to someone on Twitter named Mazizi. They're actually going to be in the link in the description below. Thank you for the research that you did on what Yuji's domain expansion hand seal actually does. But the hand sign that Yuji had done for his domain expansion is one of the Jizo Bodhisattva, where its description is protector of those crossing over, guardian of children who have died, comforter of loved ones struggling on the paths of crossing over from his life and those who grieve their deaths. To the fearlessness you illuminate and inspire in those who grieve, and deep gratitude for the balm and healing your fierce love illuminates in this world of striving in love and suffering. In particular, the two parts that I find extremely interesting about this is the first part where they say loved ones struggling on the path of crossing over from their lives and those who grieve their deaths, as well as the mention of the power of love in there. Love that inspires those, as well as the overwhelming amount of love and suffering. that is constantly present in this world, as both of those things just feel like they would heavily apply to Sukuna, mainly because Sukuna is someone who does know what love feels like, but he rejects that feeling, mainly because to him it seems like something that is useless, as well as the fact that Sukuna is clearly someone who is struggling on the path of crossing over from this life. And the main reason why I genuinely believe that he is someone who is struggling on crossing over to the next life is because of something about his ideology. A massive part about his ideology is the fact that he doesn't exactly want to stay alive, is more so he wants to find someone stronger than him to eventually beat him. He doesn't exactly care about living, he more so lives to enjoy what's available in life to offer. He kind of lives a pretty empty life other than experiencing what he has to experience in the present. That's ultimately all he cares about. After all, Sukuna has no plans for the future other than the immediate future, and Sukuna has no care about the past whatsoever. That's the same reason why he's spending so much time toying around with everybody, because he's having fun and he's enjoying every single moment of the current day, every single moment of the present, and every single little bit of entertainment that he can be granted to him. But that is ultimately why I believe that Yuji's domain expansion being something that forces you to relive your life and relive it over and over again until you move on seemed like the perfect counter for Sukuna, as Sukuna is someone who is stuck in the present, and the enjoyment that the present brings him with no care about the past. So Yuji's domain expansion being something to force him to care about the past and force him to realize that he should move on is the best way to really counter Sukuna. Mainly because of another problem that does exist of how are they ultimately going to defeat Sukuna in the end. So at least to me, it feels like the story has been building up to making Sukuna be forced to accept that his life was a good one and forcing him to accept death. Also, and this is a little bit of a side note, this would also allow us to see a Heian era flashback and the Sukuna flashback that a lot of people have been wanting to see. So yeah, that's another reason why I want this to happen, but that's more so just want. I think there is a bunch of evidence for why this theory is more than likely going to be a true one, more than I originally thought when I first made the theory, and I'm also really happy that a lot of people supported that being the domain sure hit idea that I came up with. Now, there is only one reason why I don't see this being the case, especially more than the other reasons, because if this is how the domain works, it would be insanely broken. But at the same time, I don't see this really being an issue, mainly because this is kind of the finale of JJK, or at least the final arc, so might as well give Yuji a pretty broken power-up. There is also something else I need to talk about, and that is, I feel it's extremely unlikely that this is an airport scene, and this is both Yuji and Sukuna dead in the airport, mainly because of the fact that I don't actually think that Yuji sacrificing himself to take out Sukuna would really do anything ultimately. The main reason why I believe that is purely because of the fact that we know one of Sukuna's fingers bare minimum still exists out there, being the one inside of Rika. So even if the Yuji did end up doing this, Sukuna would still be alive, and I just don't think that would be the way that JJK is going to end the story. However, now I'm going to move on to my second theory about this, which this is going to be admittedly a smaller theory and kind of works as an add-on to the first theory. But basically this theory is, the one that is reaching out to Sukuna right now is not actually Yuji Itadori, but rather Sukuna's twin brother. And that the way of initiating the sure hit of the domain is by them grabbing onto the soul of the person that they value the most, and that is what is going to cause the sure hit to start. The reason why I believe this is the case and this is not Yuji who's reaching out to Sukuna is mainly because of the fact of how their expression actually looks right now. They don't look mad at Sukuna, they don't look anything like that, they kind of look just normal in the current moment. And considering everything that just happened, including Sukuna literally just killing Yuji's own brother almost 3 minutes ago, I really doubt that Yuji would have a normal expression to see Sukuna. And because we already know that it's possible to call souls down from the afterlife because of Granny Seance's technique, it could very well be possible that Yuji is calling down upon the soul of the one that matters most to them as a part of the binding vow of the sure hit for the domain expansion, as that is the way to initiate the sure hit inside of the domain, where it basically forces you to relive your entire life with the one that matters most to you. Which I feel pretty bad for Urame if that's the person who showed up, I'm going to be honest with you. And finally, we're now going to move on to my third theory, which this third theory is probably much more insane than some of my other theories that I've come up with for a while. And that theory is the sure hit isn't actually the soul dismantle at all, but rather the sure hit is much more based on blood manipulation. Now this one is going to need a little bit of explaining to do, but the reason why I believe it's based on blood manipulation, or at least the death painting, is purely because of an ability that Choso has access to. Which that ability ability to put himself and someone he is talking to inside of this memory type of garden-like area in order for the two of them to talk. The reason why I believe this is an actual ability and not just Choso and Yuji hallucinating is mainly because of the fact that we also know that Choso is actively able to sense if his brothers have passed on because of a soul connection between them. So I do believe that is linked towards blood manipulation and some special form of blood manipulation they all have access to due to them being deaf paintings. Furthermore, even though they were in test tubes, they were able to communicate with each other for those full 100 years. So what I believe that Yuji's Sure Hit is currently is an extended version of the ability that Choso used in order to talk with his brothers and sense with his brothers, as well as talk with Yuji on his final death. I don't believe Yuji has access to memory manipulation, however I do believe Yuji through blood manipulation is able to call upon the memories and talk to people through those memories or show people those memories again. Now this is also a bit more of an out there theory as well, where Yuji is infusing blood manipulation to the Sure Hit of the domain while he himself is actively using Dismantle. The main reason we know this is possible is purely because of the fact that we see when Sukuna is fighting against Gojo, his active body is using 10 Shadows and using Maharaga and Megami, while at the same time the domain has Cleave and Dismantle imbued into it. So it could be the case that Yuji himself is actively going to use Shrine, while the domain has blood manipulation imbued into it in order to access this memory ability. Though I will admit this, Yuji's Sure Hit being blood manipulation is a lot less likely in comparison to it being Shrine, at least in my opinion, or some unknown soul ability that allows them to actually do this, mainly because I just don't see it being blood manipulation, but at the same time a part of me really wants it to be blood manipulation, especially because of Choso's own statement that it's only natural a younger sibling surpasses an older sibling upon death. However, I do think no matter what that Yuji is going to have a more passive domain, mainly because Yuji having an active domain that actively does damage to opponents doesn't really fit with Yuji's entire character, at least in my opinion, though at the same time it could very well be possible that does end up happening. After all, we didn't think that Cleave and Dismantle was going to fit as a curse technique for Yuji Itadori for that same reason, but here we are, so it might end up being possible that Yuji ends up having a domain expansion that actually does damage to opponents. And on that note, I'm going to talk about a fan theory that I recently got from my chapter review that I found really cool, and that kind of centers around damage of an opponent and actually taking out an opponent, which I'm going to read out now. Jacob Traps, by the way, is the person who came up with the theory, and basically their theory is that this is not actually Yuji's domain expansion, the train station that we're currently present in, but this is Sukuna being in the airport and basically his airport scene already. And that Yuji's domain expansion is basically going to be hell, mainly because his sorcerer life has been hell up to this point, so he's going to use that power and use that suffering through things like blood dragons, monsters, and all of that in order to strike down the ultimate evil that is Sukuna. Which I do think is a lot more epic than my theory I came up with, I'm going to be honest, but at the same time, I don't know if it's going to be likely or not. It really just depends on what Gege is going to do in the future. But I'm really excited either way, because there's a lot of hype and a lot of good things that could really happen with Yuji's domain expansion, but that's all I have to say for now. I'm going to see y'all later. I hope y'all have a good day. Peace out.